time, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'm on roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Let's camera action, I'm ready to go.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to say good morning. And in a way, it still is for me, Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton. It still is a new year. Just bringing in the new year and bringing in some 2020 vision for ourselves. And every day is a new blessing and kind of an eternal present. But we want to kind of talk today really about some eternal present and some generational issues from a health, body, mind, spirits standpoint, but definitely from health. And this may come across as a secular experience. This may it may come across as a spiritual show. But sometimes these things are interconnected. So I'm kind of pleasure to have Reverend Leroy Odinga Perry with me and Reverend Alvin Clayton here to talk about something called the Cultural Ambassadors, and they're connected with YCCI at Yale. And not to confuse things, but we know that New Haven and Yale in particular is a research institution. But how does that institution kind of provide its benefits and services to really people worldwide? I mean, the cure for cancer could come out of Yale at some point, and that will not be just made available to people here in New Haven, but anyone on the planet. So in the same way, believe it or not, we're going to talk about the Cultural Ambassadors and YCCI program and how that connection between the community, between the people of religious faith, people of institutions, people of really just wanting to get ahead in life, can kind of collaborate and share information. So this show is about really a gentleman. I use the term communing not in a sacred sense in terms of communion day, but communion in the secular sense of sharing, of being a part of one another, and sharing with one another, and helping with the dissemination of the good news. And the good news today is what you guys are bringing the good news to this table for our listeners. So, Reverend Perry, welcome. Reverend Clayton, welcome. And let's start off with
Thanks for having me.
What we call it's really a vital communion and affiliation with Yale, and it's a vital affiliation with the clinical trial programs through the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. So, what's that all about, Larry? Reverend Perry.
Well, I think it's important to note that the history of our collaboration together, the Amy Zion Church and Yale YCCI, it was, I believe, in 2009 that President Elder Timothy Howard called together.
A little closer to them.
Called together a number of Amy Zion pastors to come to Yale to discuss clinical trials. He knew that there was a certain amount of skepticism and on our part as it relates to the perception that the Black community and the minority community had with regards to research. I mean, our community was always skeptical that this kind of research had to do with being a guinea pig or being taken advantage of, as in the case of Henrietta Lacks and the Tuskegee study and the hundreds of other studies where Black people were used for experimentation, whether they were in jail, whether they were minority women, whether they were from the plantation. There's just a long history. And so our coming together was to explore the myth and the reality of clinical research and how it might affect our community.
Yes, great. Reverend?
Yes.
Anything to add on to that? Because it's so important what you've just referenced, Leroy, in terms of the historical oppression, and now we have an opportunity to really kind of get on board, and if not direct, but the collaboration to make sure that there's a benefit and not an exploitation.
There is a great benefit in clinical research for people of color. What we've come to know and understand is that there were so few of us that took part in clinical research. And the result of that was that the medication didn't work as well.
Good point.
In the black and minority community.
Good point.
But since we have been involved, the percentage of minorities involved in the clinical studies began at around 6%. Now we're about 35%. And that is a great blessing to our community.
And we're going to talk about the Cultural Ambassadors Program. We're going to talk about new discoveries taking place. We're going to talk about how you can participate with the dissemination. But I want to take a little bit of a sidebar, Reverend Perry and Reverend Clayton, because you guys just mentioned before we went on air that your guest came back from Louisiana, was it?
Yes.
And I think it's important to people to know that this is not just a locally based endeavor, and that the YCCI Cultural Ambassadors Program is on the map in terms of recognition and sharing information. So what was taking place? I mean, you guys, you weren't in New Orleans, were you?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So all right, but you were in New Orleans. But you were in
Lafayette,
Louisiana.
Lafayette,
all right,
Louisiana.
all right.
We met with the Black Nurses Convention in New Orleans, along with the FDA.
With the Food and Drug Administration.
When they had their convention last year, and then we were invited to go to the Arcadia Black Nurses Association in Lafayette and to do a presentation on the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks.
But why were you guys chosen? I mean, they could have just tossed a coin or did a Google search. I mean, I want to give you a chance, some props about the how the outer world recognizes the importance and potency that you're bringing to the table.
Well, one of the missions of the Acadian Black Nurses Association is to serve the underserved community out in Louisiana. And what we do is the same thing. We have the same mission of trying to reach the underserved, the disadvantaged, those people who don't have access to health or healthcare or quality healthcare. So we bonded together because we are on the same mission. It is a mission of liberation for those who are underserved and underprivileged in our community. So it was a wonderful collaboration. We've also been to Puerto Rico. We're in North Carolina with the Amy Zion Church there. As they work with Duke to do the same kind of
Duke
thing
University.
that we do, Duke University Medical School, trying to do the same thing that we're doing here in Connecticut, to kind of duplicate the plan and help to foster better health and better quality health care for all people.
For radio, and again on Monday morning, although folks can kind of listen to the program after, if they don't have to listen to it live, compliments of WNHH, and we have it on, shows are archived, etc. But if someone has to go and just get out of the car, has to go to work, how can they get involved with the cultural ambassadors, find out more information? We'll kind of repeat this a few times during this show in terms of people that are kind of inspired and want to discover more information.
We have a site, a Yale site, YCCI site, Help Us to Discover, or you can contact any one of our cultural ambassadors, which would be the ministers and lay people who participate in collaboration with Yale.
Great. So let's jump to some of the cultural ambassadors and what do they do, and the training you guys have referenced before we came on the air. It's really important in my mind to have these people are volunteering for the most part.
Yeah. Well, let me just backtrack just a little. Right. The when I said that we were invited to go to Yale to discuss this collaboration between the two of us, we had our doubts. And one of the things I think that helped me was when I realized that there were a lot of IRBs in place, a lot of precautions in place, and that there was new research that was being done for people with diabetes, people with sickle cell, people with heart problems, and our community was not really aware of that because we didn't have anybody to go back and to give them this information.
Indeed.
And then the other thing is that people who tried to do it, if they did, the faith community and our community was suspect of. So they needed an organization that could bring trust to the relationship But again, our initial introduction did have its hiccups because that was one of our issues. One of the things, Tom, that helped me make up my mind about it was in 2005, I was dealing with this issue in public schools where black children were being medicated, put in special ed.
Yes.
And I just could not understand it. And no one could give the answer. You know, they say, oh, they have poor attention spans, they have ASTD, they have this. And so one of the researchers at Yale, Jeff Gruden, had presented to us, and in his presentation, he was saying that you could swipe the mouth of a baby and tell by the time that they were in the 3rd grade whether or not they would have learning disability.
In terms of the genetic material in DNA.
So he worked with our Booker T. Washington Academy.
Okay.
And what he did was he was able to bring teachers in from Rhode Island to work with these students in the early stages, in the early grades.
Yes.
So that by the time they were in the 3rd grade, they were able to sail through. And I just thought, then I said, you know what? We've got to look at how clinical research can be advantageous to our community. And so our job, as all of our ambassadors, our job is to inform and to educate and to be vigilant with and to help them explore better ways of acquiring quality health.
And I appreciate your sharing that. And Reverend Clayton, you mentioned about I saw you nodding your head when Leroy mentioned the skepticism and the potential the historical mistrust.
Yes. Many people were skeptical of this program or Yale and doctors in general.
Just a little more into the mic.
Minorities would use home remedies to keep from going to the doctor. But what I discovered with YCCI when they invited us to this program, that they were hitting on issues that were so important to our community. So many minorities have diabetes. So many of us have heart disease. And so what they wanted us to do once we went through over 100 hours of training, that we would be willing to share and make them aware that things could be better for us through research and study.
So if someone's listening, how can they, and they want to hit the ground running, how can they get involved? How can they share? How can they kind of contribute to this? This is really a massive effort. It's an abolition of discrimination. It's an abolitionist movement. It's an abolitionist of disparate treatment. So I really, and don't use those terms like they only apply to 1840s, 1850s. We're in an abolitionist movement now in terms of justice and freedom. So how can folks kind of share and jump on board, even if they don't want to participate in a study per se, but what can they do to help spread the word and even to use the word to spread the gospel?
People should be willing to at least listen and go to the website or help us discover. With their pamphlets, their booklets, with many of these diseases that are in our communities, even asthma for children. And so many of our children are taking behavior drugs that they probably should not be taking. One of our studies, the doctor stated that he would not want to be in pediatrics because it's so difficult for parents and for teachers to not give children these type of drugs. But he stated,
because they're pressured to, or is it just protocol, or
sometimes the teachers are pressing, sometimes the parents are pressing because they think the children need something.
See, good point. Okay.
So if you have adequate information, you might do other things to try to help the child get through a certain period.
Sure. Leroy and Alvin, let's kind of give a shout out to some of the friends on the inside that are kind of thinking of Tashi in particular, some of the friends on the inside that are helping you, some of your partners on the YCCI side, because there's, here in New Haven in particular, we had that historical town gown kind of dissension and feeling that the doors aren't open and the doors are slammed or there's not trust. But who are some of the folks, your allies and partners on the inside that you want to kind of give a shout out to?
I'd like to give a shout out to the Reverend Moses Harvell and the Reverend Kelsey Steele.
Okay. All right. And on the community side, how about on the inside?
Some of our YCCI partners like Tisha Harris, who is doing a tremendous job in leading us in this endeavor. I mean, she's just phenomenal in her outreach within the medical community, in the schools, and helping us to understand all of the minute details that are somehow hidden from our community, but yet are so important.
Yes.
As an example, we learned in our studies that African American men die 2 times at the rate of any other men on the planet from prostate cancer. So you ask, what do we do? What do the churches do, and how can people get involved? So what do we, like right now, we're focusing on prostate cancer because we know how serious that is. But it is not a cancer that you need to die from if you can get it detected and treated, early on.
Indeed.
So that's one of the focus points that we're moving to. Also, African American men die 10 years earlier from something other than our white counterparts. And we believe that this is related to the fact that our access to care, our understanding of how important it is to have these annual visits and checkups. So what we do in our church communities is that not only do we announce this during our regular services, but we keep that conversation going.
Indeed.
We have health fairs, we have community fairs, we have videos that we show, as Reverend Clayton had said, we have pamphlets that we give out. But it's a word of mouth movement. It's a grassroots movement for us. But as Reverend Clayton had said earlier, in some cases, we have gone as high as 80% in some studies, where initially we were 6 or 7% because people were just not hearing the message.
See? Yeah, in terms of the increased participation. And as you say, so important even from I'm not a scientist, nor do I have my PhD in neurosciences or anything, but again, in terms of whatever new drugs and medications are designed, they have to take into consideration the spectrum of the human condition. And so our participation is so key. When folks say that a lot of these clinical trials, a lot of people think that they're very invasive, but on the contrary, they are not always disorienting. They're not always time consuming. They're not always painful. And you want to talk about that a little bit, about how we want to encourage people to consider the participation.
There are a number of these studies, and a number of, like Dr. Guest, who came to us. She's a medical doctor, part of the Yale family. She was talking about women who need her expertise. She gave us this commercial with Whoopi Goldberg called Squirt Squirt.
Okay.
And she was saying that many women, just don't go to the doctors to get this checked, but that this can be handled. This can be
in terms of urinary tract problems. Yes, indeed.
But just getting women to know that there is help.
Yes,
is part of the problem. Getting that message out.
And on the prostate thing, I was really excited because I had a chance to go through some treatment about 15 years ago, and I did the external radiation. And there are other people that we're going to have on the program to kind of talk about that. But you're really right. Early diagnosis, and even since knowing you and getting to becoming more aware of this issue, just doing the research every day, that there's more and more discoveries coming out on how to detect and early detect, and also not treatment that doesn't have as many adverse effects moving forward.
Yeah, like even in prostate cancer. Initially, in prostate cancer, they didn't have this robotic technology that they have now. So people who had the surgeons, there was always the possibility that they would cut the wrong nerve or the wrong endings, and the outcomes were not as good. But now the outcomes are so much better.
Yes.
But again, this is part of the research, and the other thing is, when I say we want to help our people to understand the process, we want to help them go through what is the consent forms. how to explain that. And there, like you said earlier, there are different studies. Like we had a sleep study that anybody could be a part of.
Yes.
And all they want to do is just to check out your sleep. We have one of Dr. Gray was doing a study on diabetes with young children, and what they were trying to show this that young children with iPads and iPhones, how this affected their sleep, and then how this might affect their general health. You know, so there's just so many opportunities out there for us to advance in terms of.
And if people want to learn more, want to participate, want to kind of share, want to disseminate, how should they go about that?
Help us discover at YCCI.
Help us discover, and it's really profound, Reverend.
But also, I wanted to add something.
Does he have your permission to add something?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. It's a vote. It's unanimous.
There's people who want to be a part of a study, but they think that they can't because of transportation issues or things of that nature,
or previous conditions that they might have.
That's right, and we can provide transportation to a study, and in some cases we'll provide a babysitter. So to help a mother that might be a single parent trying to be a part of the study.
Sure.
This is a vital piece to help in this area.
And again, we know that next month is Black History Month, but it's always concerned me that our health is really our history too, and we don't always hear that much about what our generational impact and organ donation kind of thing, and just health, just our history, not just 7 generations from now. How will the Black people, brown people be living, thriving, surviving 7 generations now? And I hear you guys saying that what we're involved with today will have an impact on defining the quality of life for folks that move forward. We hear so much about artificial intelligence and CRISPR babies, et cetera. So there's a lot of exploding in the scientific community that still might not be to our benefit unless we're involved.
Yeah, the genome study I think is just so important. You know, we do the Ancestry.com, the 23andMe, but we're learning so much from genes.
Yes,
and how this may affect our children and our children's children. It is just phenomenal that we participate in these studies so that we can have an advantage, at least be par with those who are privy to having the kind of resources that can place them in better health positions than people of color.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show and Reverend Leroy Odinga Perry. We're going to talk about Odinga in a second, where that middle name kind of came from. And Reverend Elvin Clayton are here with us. And gentlemen, your church is, let's give a little shout out. Your church is in Brantford.
Yes.
And
St. Stephen's Amy Zion.
St. Stephen's Amy Zion. And 2 services, 1 service?
1 service is enough.
1 service is enough? I won't say it. Well, 11, what time roughly?
It's 11 to 12:30.
Okay. And Reverend Clayton,
we're in Bridgeport, Connecticut, the Walters Memorial Amy Zion Church on the corner of Broad and Gregory.
All right.
And our services start at 10:45.
10:45, just the one service. One service only. And so you guys, when did you committed yourself to the ministry? And I'll tell you where I'm going with this after you answer this question. You committed yourself to the ministry 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
Yeah. That's when I met you, Tom.
Well, we don't want to kind of let people know. And I tried to discourage you the best I could, but clearly I was unsuccessful. But hopefully the Lord will forgive me for so about 30 in the divinity school was 72, but
that's right.
And
about 30 years.
About 30 years ago. And so you referenced this earlier, and you referenced Timothy Howard, but why? I mean, you guys could be doing anything else. There are other ministers doing anything else. How does this fit into your kind of theological framework and your understanding of
Timothy Howard is the niece of Tisha Johnson.
Okay.
Tisha Johnson Harris now.
Yes.
And when she asked him, could he help her?
Yes.
With a project, he said, "Of course."
So she had something on her heart. Yeah.
And once he told her that he wanted us to be a part of clinical research,
yes,
he said no. But she convinced him.
Oh.
And he convinced us.
So his initial reticence refers to Odinga when you're talking about the skepticism and the mistrust. So he had to be convinced also, in spite of his daughter seeking
his niece
seeking his.
Yeah. So he didn't convince us. He brought us together so that we could discuss the whole issue. And I think each of us had to make up our own minds whether or not we wanted to be a part of this. Because, the black church has been always the church of our church, the Amy Zion Church, has been the church of black liberation and freedom, the church of Fred Douglass, Sojourner Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois,
Harriet
Tubman, and so many others. So we've always been on the forefront in terms of liberation theology. And I think that this fits right within the scheme of trying to bring empowerment to a community through knowledge and through an understanding. And I think that's what we do best. So it is not contrary to what we would normally do.
But there are other ministers that are doing this point I'm making, and other denominations that are not on the forefront. So I'm just so impressed with.
That's true.
With your being the vanguard, if you will.
All right. I won't touch that.
Well, you want to do another program? When you say you won't touch that, I mean, don't leave our audience hanging. What would you rather not touch?
Well, I'll put it this way.
Oh yeah,
we had the opportunity to do so.
Okay, and I'm not blasting other denominations. Don't get me wrong there. But certainly, I guess I like to lift up people that are leadership is that's why we have the word leadership for people to kind of see and people that kind of write manifestos.
That's correct.
People that kind of share the vision. And so I'm not, let the record show, I'm not blasting my other friends of the cloth at all. Okay. I'm just proud that you gentlemen, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah. There's one family, but I always like to kind of lift up where we can go and options. And this is a distinct option. This is a profound option. This is a proactive option for other churches and people to get involved with.
Well, I was going to also say that that the ministers were the first to be a part of this project. And we realized that we also were not enough, just one pastor. So we also engaged members of our community to also be cultural ambassadors, like Sunday Black, Irene Saunders, Lil and Joycey from Varick, and Ray from Stratford, and I mean just a host of people, so that it helps us to spread the message and to work out programs and activities which will help people to see what we're doing, to get the message out,
And down the road, what can we look forward to? Just more additional building on the momentum that's already in place, or any new kind of initiatives, or what can we look forward to as you kind of grow and expand?
Well, right now we're focusing on the prostate cancer,
okay,
and we hope to be back next week. There's some very interesting and innovative research that's going on, and I think it's going to be very helpful to our community, and we are really excited about that. And while we're doing that, we're also working with the other issues of like depression,
and
sickle cell, and heart, and breast cancer, because we know how important all these are.
And they're all connected. I really appreciate your saying that. I noticed just the sidebar yesterday. Alfred Edmonds, the editor for Black Enterprise magazine, put a post up on Facebook that he had treatment in 2010.
Wow! And
he's now as a bodybuilder. And the article he was referencing was the impact of obesity. But whether it's food or health or nutrition or exercise or DNA or lifestyle, there's just so many factors that can contribute to any sort of cancer. But in terms of prostate, yeah, I mean, if you're a male on the planet, you have to be aware of it. So that's why I'm so excited about this show, that we can kind of spread the word, and then the vanguard or the leadership that you guys are sharing, as well as the Yale Center for Clinical Investigation. We don't want to take for granted what we have going on here in this small little town called New Haven. The Yale came in 1701, so it's a chance to be. Sometimes there's a pride that's kind of proactive rather than pride being ego-centered, and we can be prideful about the people, the knowledge, the institutions we can connect with in our little old town here, and be a historical change maker at the same time.
I think, Tom, coming out of the darkness into the light has always been a problem, and particularly with people who've been involved in clinical research. They're sometimes hesitant to tell the story. And in not telling the story, the message doesn't go as quickly or as fast as it could go. It's like folk who've had like prostate cancer just don't want to talk about it. They don't want anybody to know that even had it. but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that we can share the story,
Yes.
the greater the vision and the outreach will be for those who are to come before this bar. So we're even asking people in our churches who've been a part of any kind of clinical research to let us know, because we're interested in their story and them telling their story.
That's right.
It's nothing like it's what the gospel is.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
telling the story
Mm-hmm.
and being open, bringing out of the darkness the light, because that will enlighten all of us, and in so doing, maybe lighten the burden going forward for people who may be hesitant about getting treated.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's also important, as Dr. Perry was stating, about the testimony of these brothers
Mm-hmm.
that have come forth.
Mm-hmm.
We have ministers and bishops even
Yes.
who are willing to come forth and tell the story, and that helps the trust factor
Mm-hmm.
of them coming forth and getting themselves checked.
Absolutely right.
And because of it, we don't know how many lives that we will save.
Yes. Yes.
By doing it in this manner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess as you gentlemen were talking, Willie Holmes, who I know will not mind my mentioning his name, is a survivor, and Dr. Reggie Mayo is a survivor here in New Haven, and others. So we're going to have them kind of come on the show if time permits. Because you're right, that shame element, sometimes you're not even aware of that shame element that kind of causes you not to be as open-minded. I remember when I was first diagnosed, and then I just chatted with a few people, but I still felt hesitant, even though I knew other people, and even my best friend, who I hadn't seen, one of my best friends in Pittsburgh, who I hadn't seen in literally 40 years. When I called him, he's on the West Coast. He said he had gone through had treatment, also had the robotic, the Da Vinci procedure. So it's just the connections that we have. And again, for me, it's the connections, because the three of us, I don't want to say what our combined ages might be, but my guess is it might be around 210 years. I'm just saying. I'll let someone else do the math, but I'm just saying that if our combined age might be around 210, and for folks that are unborn, as we alluded before, this is what we're here to kind of, as long as we're allowed to, the Lord allows us to be living and breathing at this point in time, to kind of beat this drum. It's so important. So for folks that might be tuning in or might have to go, for them to find out how they can get involved with the Culture Ambassador Program, get involved with YCCI, get involved with these really important, and we use this term clinical investigation, but it's really how can humans human thrival and survival? How can we accelerate and maintain human thrival and survival for all folks, using the medical knowledge that we have at the moment available to us, and using the knowledge in a non-discrimination way. So how can folks get involved or find out or check these things out?
Yes, again, you can just go onto the Yale YCCI page, and there's a number there. You can go on and log in, and you can research to find out if there's any clinical research that you're interested in.
Yes, that's the key, because they're listed, and even just to read about them. And it might not be for you, but correct me if I'm wrong, but you can pass on that information. So
That's
just read about it. I mean, if you're a student, whoever's listening to the show, you don't have to feel that you are affected by it. Either someone in your family's affected, someone in your workplace is affected, or you might be affected. So if you're a human, the information there is important for you to share with your mother, your father, your grandfather, your cousins, anyone. It's just so important. In my mind, obviously, we've been doing the show for 5 years. And I believe in I worship at the Church of Communication. I might worship at other churches, but I certainly worship at the Church of Communication. And it's vital. It's vital. I've noticed that the young people also have an increased interest. We hear about vegan and yoga, and so they have an increased interest in this as well. So if you're a young Black person, brown person, person of color, don't slip on what's. There's a chance to kind of see what the medical profession is up to. You may also be interested in the profession in terms of nursing or public health or becoming a doctor. So just to see where research is heading. And then lastly, and I say this in terms of an excited sense, in terms of economics affects a lot. And if you read any time about Yale's endowment, and if you read about the portions of what schools and departments contribute to the Yale endowment, the Yale Medical School brings in an extraordinary amount of money in terms of its research activities. Medical schools in general bring in a lot of money for research institutions. So again, Yale is our taxpayer money, is funding these research studies. Yale is kind of garnishing a lot of research dollars, et cetera, and we need to be a part of that.
And one of my hopes, Tom, is that schools like Yale will open their doors for more black and minority candidates, because I think that will make a tremendous difference. You know, to be able to go to a doctor that's a black doctor,
yes,
someone that you can feel comfortable talking with. I think that's important. And if these channels, if these doors don't open, if they can only go to Howard or to Atlanta, we need to make this global.
Yes.
And I think that will also add to the better health and welfare of minority people.
Absolutely. I've had a chance to interview Lisette Martinez, who's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the hospital, and Darren Lattimore, who's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the med school, just on this topic. And so we have to definitely let people know, and for the young people to know too, that you have to be prepared and get started. Guess we have about 8-9 minutes, so let's just kind of take a deep breath, and there may be some things on your heart and mind that you'd like to share. Certainly, we're going to resume the conversation on next Monday, but there may be some things on your heart and mind that you want to share today to kind of set the stage for why this is really. I can only speak personally. I mentioned I have a personal commitment to this issue in terms of Prostate Thriver, but it's also just health has been something that's very important to me, and I'm at the age where health. I'm aware of health issues, of the importance of health too. So just any kind of, as we kind of wind down for the 9 minutes, any things on your mind?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to go back a bit.
Sure, please.
And remind the audience that of the importance of going to your doctor for your yearly physical. And you also must understand that the studies that are available to us that are in our communities, the diabetes, the cancers, even arthritis, obesity, all these studies are available. And they must remember that the study may or may not help you as an individual, but it may help your children.
Indeed.
May help your grandchildren.
Indeed.
May help the next minority president down the road. It may help someone you don't know, or maybe someone that you do love. But it's important that we all take part in this in some way or some form.
Excellent. Odinga?
The other thing is Yale YCCI puts out a newspaper, but we also, the Amy Zion Church, partnering with Yale in collaboration with Yale, also put out a quarterly newspaper, and I think that is that's a tremendous gain on our part.
And it's online, and if you go to the website, you can the tab is there.
I'm hoping it's going to be online.
Well, you've asked them, yeah.
Yes, but that's going to be significant. You see, the thing about a partnership is, if it's one way, it's not really a partnership. If you want to have any say, but you have to only yield to the dominant partner, then it's not a partnership. Our partnership is a partnership when we can say no to certain studies. Our partnership is a partnership that says, here are our concerns. So when we go in and we meet with them, we let them know that in our community, these are the issues that our people are concerned with. And then we try to focus our studies, the research that is going on in Yale, to bring out the researchers who may affect these initial problems that surface, particularly in our community. I know there's a study now out with Alzheimer's, and they have a program where they can help the spouse, or the family member, help them to learn how to work with this as an issue, and I think that's awesome.
And I'm just so glad you mentioned that, just as a point of reference. And this is a true story. Folks that have listened to my show know sometimes I'll get a little bit too transparent, but I like to be transparent. I left my keys last week on the trunk of my car, on the trunk of my car, and then went to walk. And there's a different story about why I did that. But I left my keys on the trunk of my car and then forgot where they were. until my wife helped me to find to backtrack. And so whether that's an indication of early stage or not, but doesn't matter. We can laugh at it. You hear this word, the dementia, and Alzheimer's, and blah 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 blah. But again, I think it's exciting about what is God kind of telling us. Let's just kind of end on that point, if you don't mind. I mean, you gentlemen are pastors. You've been pastors for over 3 decades, so you're not embarrassed to kind of talk about your faith claim. But what do you think God is telling us these days and times in terms of the marriage, and I'll use that term in a general sense, between science and theology and religion and where the world is going? Certainly you might have your denominational principles and your ethics, but I'm just curious how you see. Again, I want to kind of conclude on how this kind of fits into your ministry, how this fits into your faith claim, how this fits into why you think people regard, even if you're an atheist, you still are encouraging atheists to participate in these things, right? I mean, I'm making a half joke, but still, you're coming from a perspective. So I want to give you a chance so we conclude to kind of share, if you want to, about your theological understanding or your faith claim, or what really motivates you to kind of.
But Tom, I think that the folkways and mores of our people sometimes is a deterrent, particularly for people who feel that all they need is faith.
Okay.
If I just pray, the Lord is going to deliver me. Now, I believe that's true. I believe that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And I do believe that praying people and believing people have a great chance of success. But at the same time, I would not leave out science.
So there's a unity there.
Yes, God is the God of faith. He's also the God of science.
Yes, that's what.
And like when we started with the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks, only God could have given her those immortal cells. You call them.
Virgin, yes.
Virgin Mary cells,
yes.
Not Mary, but virgin cells. And I think that, so we have to let people know that, when we talk about when they say sugar diabetes, we're talking about diabetes. I got sugar, and the Lord gonna take care. No, you got sugar, now we're gonna get you treated for that. And that's important. You're suffering from depression, and you think that God can heal you. That's fine, but you ought to also know that there are people out there, professionals,
yes,
who you can talk to, who can help you. And so they must work hand in hand. And that's part of our message to our people and to those who are concerned about clinical research.
Excellent.
Basically, I would like to close by saying God created all things. And He's the creator of people. And everything that we're getting from medicines, God created it. And He's given us a mind to use for the good of all humanity. So basically, I like to stop at that point and letting our audience know that we're not straying from the faith, because God is the creator.
Indeed. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Again, I just wanted to kind of set the stage, and we'll be back next week for further discussion. And it's just so important, I think, as we think of 2020. And I like people are using this from the marketing standpoint, obviously the connotation of 2020 vision. And so, yeah, I'm wishing everyone 2020 perfect vision and discernment, and just a lucid way of kind of looking, in a clear way of looking at what life is about, and your role in life and your own personal life. So you gentlemen have really helped us to kind of establish that fact for our second show in January. And thank you so much. You've been with the Tom Ficklin Show and Reverend Odinga Perry. We did not get a chance to talk about Odinga, but how that worked. But we'll get to that. Do you have a middle name, Reverend Clayton?
I do not.
Oh, you do not. All right, Reverend, I do not Clayton. Thank you also for being with us.
Thank you, Tom.
Harry, thank you. And as always, this is the New Haven Independent, WNHH, and we just really appreciate this opportunity to commune with folks that are of one mind and one heart.
Blessings, and I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Yeah, this is my road, lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. Way too long, we faced them storms, now you gon' face the dawn you waited for. I said from night to dawn, I right my wrongs, alarm and competition.